Well, hello there. It's Yvonne from Women's Fitness Adventures. So lovely to have you here. Today, I'm going to talk about something that's been quite topical in the news in the summer period here in Australia, and that is about hiking safely, having some protocols and support systems around you, so that when you choose to go off on a hike, whether that's for a couple of hours, a whole day, or an extended period of time, that you know roughly what to take with you and some protocols around what to do to keep you safe in the event that something should happen to you. And if you've been listening to our media over the Australian summer, you'll notice that there have been some hikers that have met with some unfortunate circumstances, or been lost, or had some rescues happen. Now, I'm not going to talk to any of those individual circumstances, but I am going to share with you some hints and tips around keeping safe when we're out on our hiking adventures. So welcome and stick with me, and I appreciate if you have questions or comments that you share them, because collectively the more we share, the more we learn. And if you are watching live, and Patricia's already jumped the gun. Hello, Patricia, watching from Bribie Island. If you're watching live, please go ahead and say hello. It's always nice to see who's here. And if you're watching on replay as well. And like I said, if you have a question, please ask away. Now, I'm flying solo this week. Last week, I had the wonderful Angela Council, who is a member and also runs Embrace Menopause, a menopause program for women. But our conversation last week was around, a bit about the hiker's mindset and doing hard things. And that episode last week was huge. It has been, well, when I checked last on Tuesday, so a day later, it had been watched over 1,000 times. So we got some wonderful feedback on that one as well. So if you haven't caught up on that one, jump back into either YouTube or Facebook, our main Facebook page, and have a listen to that one, because the response from all of you guys listening was really fabulous. So, and hello, Helen. Thank you for tuning in as well. So, like I said, I'm going to talk about how to stay safe on the trails and some essential hiking tips. Now, this is not meant to be the be-all and end-all of what you need to take with you. And this is just some suggestions only, and it will vary for your individual circumstance. But these are some of the things that I do and take and protocols that I follow, and certainly as a business owner, that we need to follow when we take people out on the bush or out onto the trails with us as well. So hello, Marianne, and hello, Leonie, as well. So lovely to have you here. We've got the whole of the East Coast covered at the moment, so that is lovely. So, as we saw over the summer, staying safe on the trails is more critical than ever. And we often, when we're first starting out with hiking, when we don't know a lot, we often wonder what certain things are for and why we need to take certain things with us, and why on earth do I have to pack all of that when it's a beautiful sunny day? That just seems like overkill, and perhaps it is overkill, but overkill is better with the word over in it than anything else. So firstly, I'm going to talk about, and I made a little video for one of our groups the other day heading to New Zealand. The reason that we want to make sure that we have the right gear and equipment with us in our packs and on our person is for not only our safety, but for the safety of the group as well. So I'll break this down into it, and it's not a masterclass. It's not an exhaustive list, and you would need to adapt it to your individual circumstances, but this is certainly how I like to address things. So I have a pack that's big enough to fit all of my stuff in it, a backpack that fits well on my body, because one of the first things for staying safe on the trail is that we're able to carry what's on our back and feel safe and comfortable with it in there. So making sure that your backpack is size appropriate and fits you and feels comfortable. Now, inside that backpack, we're going to have some things that are really important. We're going to have water, sufficient water. Now, in Australia, we can, when we're out and about, drink water from streams and the like, but it's highly likely that that stream has been contaminated by some animals further upstream, which can lead to a risk of, getting some form of diarrhea. So you can buy things like life straws, and you can buy things like water purification tablets, which work, but they take a little bit of time. So unless you know that it's absolutely pure, safe drinking water, the key is to always make sure that you have enough drinking water packed. And one of the easiest ways to do that, and the safest ways for us to stay hydrated on the trail, is to have a water bladder. So this is an old one of mine. It hasn't got the hose in it at the moment. But what we know is that if you can fit a water bladder into your backpack and drink through the hose, that you are actually going to drink more water when you're on the trail than if you are reaching around for water bottles. Now, that's here in Australia. Europeans are very different. So we're not talking European. And certainly I know when we were hiking in our Germany trip last year, there were beer stops as well, not for us, but for the locals. But certainly making sure that you are sufficiently hydrated is one of the best ways to stay safe on the trail. And how do you know that you're sufficiently hydrated? Because you're going to the toilet. Okay, so you might be, or you are sweating it out. But one surefire way to know that if you are hydrated enough is to go to the toilet. And I know as women, and we're talking we's number one here. As women, we don't really want to go in the bush. And, that can be a reason that we don't drink enough water. But let me reinforce to you that one of the ways that we can stay safe on the trail is to make sure that we are well hydrated. So having more water than you think, you can always tip that water out. But having more water than you think is much better than not having enough water. Now, I know some of you who are members may have heard all of this before and read it all before, but it's like when we get on an airplane, they're always doing the same safety briefing each time because it never hurts to hear it again. So if you have some lived experience of being well prepared when a situation arose, or you have the opposite where you weren't prepared enough and you'd like to share, please go ahead and share that in the comments. So water is our number one thing, followed by food. Now, we always say that when we're hiking, it is not the time to go on a diet. So when we are hiking or doing sustained activity for 90 minutes or more, we are actually going to start to draw on our carbohydrate stores. So what that means is that we need to have enough energy to keep going. So we often think, particularly, and I'm generalizing here, hi, Sophia. Keep drinking and stay hydrated. Hi, Sophia. Sophia is in Crete, one of our partners over in Crete, is to make sure that you have enough food with you. You don't have to eat all the food, but making sure that you have enough food with you. And that can be food that is easily digestible. It doesn't necessarily have to be the freshest and fanciest food. It can be muesli bars, it can be apples, it can be popcorn, it can be trail mix, that type of thing, so that if you don't eat it, some of it will keep for the next time that you're out on the trail. But always having more food than you think, it doesn't mean taking, bags of groceries with you, but having more food than you think gives you choices. And sometimes if you are doing multi-day hikes, you get hungry. Day one, you may not be as particularly hungry, but day two, you are hungrier. And day three, you are hungrier again. So we're using a lot of energy. And when the trail is new to us, the energy that we use is also coming from our concentration. We're concentrating really hard. So we need more water and we need more food. So they're one of the ways that we can stay safe on the trails. The other way is what we wear. So making sure that we wear appropriate clothes and the clothes are layered. Now, in Australia, we have, and most countries, it is a land of contrasts. It can be bright and hot and sunny where I live with rain, but very, very humid, or it can be alpine conditions and it can be sunny and within minutes there's, a whiteout has come in and it could be snowing, same in New Zealand. So there are lots and lots of variables that can happen with weather. And one of the key things to staying safe in all hiking conditions, in all weather conditions, is making sure that you have the right gear with you. So the layering is really, really important. So where I am in Queensland, you probably wouldn't take thermals with you unless you were, out west in the middle of winter and getting up super, super early. But certainly in alpine areas, in New Zealand, in those places, you would make sure that you have that type of clothing and layering packed either on your person or in your bag. So, it's layering. So you can dress it up or down according to the weather conditions. I do get asked, well, what is it going to rain where we're going? If I knew that, I'd be in a very different place right now if I could predict the weather. the key is that we don't know. So that's why we need to be prepared. And having a raincoat that is climate suitable is really important. So what is a raincoat? Where I live here in a warm climate in summer, if I was to put my beautiful red Mont raincoat on, which I absolutely love, it would be like being in a sauna right now. It is not appropriate for where I am. In fact, no raincoat from where I am is for where I am right now is appropriate. I am better just to get wet in a summer downpour and let the steam come off. But certainly in New Zealand, I would wear that. And in a lot of other climates in Europe, in Iceland. But making sure that if I got wet and I started to get cold, that I had enough clothing or warm things to put on, that I wasn't going to put myself into a dangerous medical situation. So we can think, I'm on top of Mount Kosciuszko, it's a beautiful sunny day, it's not going to rain. Or here I am at Milford Sound in New Zealand, it's not going to rain. Here I am in Iceland, it's a beautiful day, it's not going to snow. And then all of a sudden, the weather conditions will rapidly change and you get caught out. And we've seen that happen, not with our groups, but we've seen and heard that happen across the media. So making sure that you have the weather appropriate gear with you for the hike. Now, if you're on a multi-day hike, most suppliers would share that information with you, should share that information with you. And if you are doing day hiking for yourself, just go through this mental checklist. And if you're a member, we have all this stuff inside our resources, but go through this mental checklist of, what do I need to keep me safe? Because it's not what happens on trail that's an accident or an issue. It's the decisions that you've made a couple of times before that lead to that being an accident when it happens. So, if you're hungry on trail and you get lost and you're out for much longer than you thought and you don't have any food, it's the decision that you made before you left home to not pack enough food that's got you into the predicament where you are right now. So hopefully that is making sense to everyone. And I'm just going to check in with who's here. I know I checked in with Sophia, and I am looking forward to seeing you later this year. Hello, Christine. I was just thinking about you the other day, heading back to the East Coast. Louise, hello, Louise, and hello, Leanne. Hello, Marie up in Noosa. Sharon on the Gold Coast. Hello, Diane, twice north of Brisbane there. And another Leanne. We seem to have multiple Leannes on the thing tonight. And Elizabeth down in beautiful South Australia for the moment. So, the layering is really, really important. So is having the right headwear, whether that's a beanie or a cap, and certainly having sunscreen. In Australia, we are really particular. Well, we should be. If we're not, here's your daily lesson. Wear sunscreen every single day on your face, whether you are leaving the house or not. But regardless of where we travel in the world, sunscreen should be mandatory for everyone. It is the best form, especially if you're worried about wrinkles and crinkles. It is the best form to delay that as long as we possibly can, but making sure that you use that sunscreen, and it is just part of your kit all the time. But one of the reasons that we want to make sure that we have the right gear and the right equipment, the right mindset, all of that sort of stuff, is to keep us safe so we can be totally responsible for ourselves, and making sure that the hiking party that you're with are also following your patterns, your beliefs, your thoughts around what is safety, because that's really important. Because whilst you can have all the gear, if the people you're with aren't agreeing with you, then they're putting the whole group at jeopardy. So that's something to really be mindful of. So some other things I have in my kit, particularly here in Australia, well, everywhere, I have a first aid kit with me. That's really, really important. Everyone should have a first aid kit, because an accident is an accident. You don't know when or what things may happen. Now, this is not to scare you. This is just to make sure, just like you would go in to do a public speaking event, you wouldn't go in without any preparation, without any thought about what you were doing. So it's exactly the same when we go hiking. It's just be prepared for the event, anything that may happen, and then the likelihood of it happening, it's probably quite low, but you're prepared should something happen. So in Australia or all around the world when I hike, and Sophia, we hiked in Crete last year, we had the right gear. We had the gear that was appropriate for the climate. It was very, very hot when we were there. So we adhered to the guidelines from the authorities that we couldn't hike because trails were closed and it was beyond safe to hike in those conditions. So I'm just going to share Marianne's before I jump into some things in the kit. It happened to me on all of my hikes with Women's Fitness Adventures. Okay, should I read further? The weather started fine, but we ended up wearing our warm gear and wet weather gear. Carry it for all seasons, or carry clothing for all seasons, and something that Marianne learnt on her very first hike. And I think, Marianne, from memory, that very first hike was to the summit of Mount Kosciuszko, Australia's highest peak. And when we took our groups there on the Couch to Mountain program in December, it was a whiteout on both days. We couldn't see more than 10 meters ahead of us, and we couldn't, we couldn't let anyone get too far ahead from a safety perspective. So what we did was we carried walkie-talkies, person at the front, person at the back, had a walkie-talkie, and we were never more than, maybe 10, 12 meters from first to last, just from a safety perspective. So having that first aid kit is really important. Something else in countries where we have reptiles is important to carry a snake bite kit. And it seems to have come up a lot in conversation in all the circles that I've been in for the last week. And someone said to me, not related to hiking, that if they were out, they'd really want me on their hike to make sure I could deal with the snake bite. And I said, look, that's not a problem. But what I want on my hikes when people come with me is that if I was to be bitten by a snake, that they would know what to do. And when we get into these circumstances where we aren't, it's a totally unfamiliar situation, 99.9% of the time, nothing happens. So we are in this situation where we don't have to think about our safety because we've prepared well in advance. We've got everything covered for the contingencies. But if something were to happen, we don't really know how our response would be. So would we panic? Would we, go blank in the head? So for me, with my snake bite kit, and every Australian hiker should have a snake bite kit in their pack, I actually have a laminated sheet in my snake bite kit that says what to do. So, we can, in those circumstances, we don't want to rely on memory. I don't want to rely on somebody else thinking they know what to do. I want someone to follow some instructions. This is what needs to happen. So in all of the years we've been doing hikes, which is, 11 and a half years now, we've probably seen half a dozen snakes that slither off into the distance. So it's not a common thing, but it should be standard in everybody's first aid kit. Now, in terms of first aid kits, I'm not here to tell you what should be in your first aid kit. That you can go onto any of the ambulance sites, any of the first aid training courses, and they will share with you what should be in your kit. And it's a bit like insurance. It's making sure that you have this stuff with you so that if something doesn't go to plan, you've got yourself in a situation where it is going to be manageable. So the other thing I have in my bag, and has been pointed out to me on a couple of occasions that, you told me to bring something that I never use. And I don't know if anyone watching can guess what that thing is that always sits in my backpack but is never used. I'll share that in a moment. Which is a really, really critical item to have. While everyone's guessing away with what that critical item is, the other things that we can do around hiking safety is let people know where we're going. So if you have been watching our media of late, it is really important to let people know where you're going. If there's no reception, if there's no connectivity available, like when do you expect to be back? Even to the point of leaving a note in your car if you are, in a space where, you haven't done the track before, just leave a note, go hiking, should be back around X time. Always, I know some people like solo hiking, but if you're new to hiking and you're, your experience is getting started, then I always recommend that you hike with someone, because it just gives you that peace of mind. It can upskill you as well. The other thing is, when you're hiking with a group and there's an intersection or a junction, is to make sure that if the group is a little bit further apart, is to make sure that when you turn, or there's an intersection or a junction, that you either stop and wait, or the person behind you, they might be 10, 20 meters behind, can actually acknowledge that you have turned, because that's how people get lost. And in my environment, in my world, and certainly the people that we work with here at Women's Fitness Adventures, we don't leave anyone on the trail. We hike as a group. We are a team, and making sure that, it is that no one is left behind. And I think that's a really important thing. So if someone, when I've done Kokoda in New Guinea, the Kokoda Trail, when someone leaves the track to go to the toilet, they will take their pack off, they will go into the bush, not very far. The other person can turn around and look out the other way, but the person is back on the track, because you can come out of that bush and you can turn, if no one's there, you can turn in any direction and go completely the wrong direction and end up lost. So, when someone says, oh, I'm just going to go over here and take some photos and I'll catch up with you, like in my book, no, take some photos. We have time. There is no sense in, the other people in the party getting a couple of hours down the track and realizing that person hasn't caught up, and then we have a situation that wasn't planned and needs to be dealt with. So the other thing is to have some sort of protocols as well. So, I anticipate I'll be back by this time, or we anticipate that, we'll be back into reception at this time, or I'm going to turn around at X time, or I'm going to text the people back home to let them know, yeah, hike's going well, I'm on my way back. So having some sort of protocol and some sort of plan, if it doesn't go to plan, what are you going to do, is really important. Now, when you're on a group hike with us, we take care of all that. We have our emergency response documents that go into national parks, because we need to get permits, and you can only get permits when you have insurance requirements and all of those protocols set up. But as an individual hiker going out and doing this on your own for a day, you don't have to deal with that level of detail. So some of the thinking behind that and some of the awareness might not be there, which is why I'm sharing this today. So if anyone, like Marianne did, has some experience they want to share where their preparation made for a better hike, or perhaps you might have not packed enough food and run out, or had too much food, or something like that, what worked for you. I did ask the question a little while ago, what is the one thing that I always have in my bag that may not always be used? And there's a couple of things. So Carolyn says head torch, Christine says EPIRB, Susan says emergency blanket. Wow, for most of my hikes, I have a head torch and all of my hikes, I have a head torch and an emergency blanket. Christine, when I am going anywhere further than our local mountain here in Brisbane, I'll have the EPIRB with me as well. But both Susan and Carolyn are correct. The emergency blanket sits inside my first aid kit. So that wasn't really what I was referring to, but a very good pickup. It is actually, as Carolyn pointed out, my head torch. And people will say to me, but you told me to bring that and I never used it. And why am I telling you to bring that? Because, so I'll just pull out my head torch. It's actually got my earplugs in there for sleeping as well. So my head torch is here and it always travels with me. So sometimes, it's more that insurance thing as well. In the event of, say there's a delay in us getting back to the car or the vehicle and it starts to get dark, then a head torch will help us light the way. If for some reason we have to stay out longer because someone may be slower or may have hurt themselves and coming out a little bit slower and it gets dark, we have a head torch. Your phone torch will not last very long and you need to hold it in your hand. But by having a head torch, put that on the right way, by having a head torch, you still have two hands free. A head torch is also great if if it's if your backpack's pretty dark and you need to look in and you can search around. But also if you're sharing accommodation as well, you can just have your head torch there and you can read in bed. You can get up and go to the bathroom at night as well without turning on all the lights and disturbing someone else, or worse still, tripping over and maybe hurting yourself in the room, and not even being out on the hike. So that is my thing that goes with me on every single hike, no matter how far or how wide. That is always with me, and it has come in handy so many times. So really important that you have a head torch. Just pop it into a little waterproof bag and keep it inside your day pack. They do need to travel with you on the airplane. They can't go in your undercarriage luggage. And a hot tip for everyone, and I know this is not on track about safety, but a hot tip for everyone: if you are leaving anywhere, going through customs, you need to make sure that you have I think I need a new bag here, that you have your batteries all lined up, because if you don't, batteries can get taken away from you. So you need to have them so they're not loose at all, or customs will take them. Certainly New Zealand customs will take them off you. So that is the one thing that I have as well. Now, there are lots of other things that you can include, and depending who you're going with, depending where you're going, depending how far, you could have the need for maps and compasses. You could have the need for, creating a fire, provided it's allowed, and we don't really want to talk fires at the moment. Having your personal medication as well. So, if your hike is planned for 3 hours and it ran over time and it was 5 hours, if you normally had medication at the end of the day, you'd be back in plenty of time. But if your hike is planned for 8 hours and say you're gone for 9 hours and it takes you 2 hours to get home and you have a window for your medications as well, is that going to be sufficient time for you to take it? So just thinking about all of those little things as well. The other thing with, staying safe and well on the trails is to make sure in your car you've got some stuff as well. Have some cold water back in the car. Have, some warm or dry clothes back in the car as well, so that, if you get to the end of the hike and you're dripping wet because it's hot and humid, you've got something dry that you can change into, so that on the drive home in the car where the aircon's on, you're not going to chill down too quickly and, catch cold or anything like that because you're sitting in wet, sweaty clothes. So, I think having those protocols around you, someone knowing in your group whether it's a little piece of paper or whether you tell them in advance what your passcode to your phone is, so if something were to happen, or what the emergency app is that you use, or how the EPIRB works. So these are all the protocols that we do around our adventures. Knowing where in our packs as leaders, if you needed to access our first aid, where that information is as well. So one of the things we do on our adventures is make sure that we have everyone's emergency contact details with us, so that if something were to go wrong, we are able to, enact that protocol to make sure that we can keep everyone as safe as we possibly can. So this episode wasn't meant to be a downer. It wasn't meant to scare anyone away from hiking. If anything, it should really encourage you that, hiking is a little bit more than a walk in the park, if you want it to be. And you can see some amazing, beautiful places and spaces that many people can't see if you're prepared to, get your 2 feet out there and, put in the effort and go further away. But to do that safely and to come back safely and to come back well and just keep that as your hobby, then putting some protocols around what keeps you safe and what's important to you when you hike are really great things that you can do. And it's all a learning experience. And yes, it is a little bit of investment in time and money, but really important for peace of mind and your safety, because we don't really get a second go at our safety. So making sure that you have that. And, if you get into a space or a group where you think, I don't feel particularly safe, then, really important that you speak up. And certainly, if you're in groups where people start to leave you behind and that's not important to you, or, that is really important to you where you want to hike as a team or a group, then, I would start questioning, is there another group out there for me? So, trust your gut when it comes to this stuff. And don't just think you can wing it, because winging it is when the accidents do happen. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening in. I do hope that you've got something out of it. If you're watching live and have some comments, please go ahead and drop them in below. Hopefully it's been helpful and informative for you. And if you're watching on the replay, if you have any questions, please drop them in as well. Hello, Kerry and Colleen as well. And Barbara, please drop them in here as well. So members, a lot of this information is available for you in our member resources. And if stuff isn't there, you can just tag us and go, hey, is there a resource for this? And we can point you in that right direction. And if there's not one there, we can certainly create one. So thanks for tuning in. I'll be back next week. And if you have any hot topics you'd like me to cover, then please let me know. Thank you.